this is actually your presentation, not mine. And so if there's anything that you want to talk about or that you don't understand or that you want me to clarify, please ask me to do that. There'll be a PowerPoint presentation, and then I'm going to walk through a risk and the sources and consequences of a risk and look at the controls so that you can determine whether or not you need to do a new one. There's two ways to limit the number of risk assessments. One is to look at the ones you have and see if they're still good. The other is to look at the risks you have and see whether they're actually sources of risk rather than the risk themselves. So you might need, lots of people start off with a list of 125 risks, and they end up having 6 or 8 once it's all sorted out. So whenever you do a risk assessment that's written down, not the one you did for lunch today, you record the conditions that were present when it was done. And provided those conditions aren't changing, the risks shouldn't have changed. And so that's called the context statement. We're going to go through that. This is the whole risk management process. And so you can see that this is this context. The external context is all the things outside of your organization. The internal context is your budgets, your priorities, your objectives. They establish the bounds for the risk management, so you're having lots of fun discovering risks that you can tell whether or not you've drifted off topic. Then risk identification, what can happen, when, where, how, and why. Risk analysis, determining the consequences and then the likelihood of those consequences to determine the severity of the risk, and is that okay with me? And then if it's not okay with me, I've got to do something, risk treatment, risk mitigation. The reason that you assess risks is because you don't want too much. This is one of the most complex things the risk managers talk about. When you're standing on the corner and the little number's counting down, you have a tolerance as to when you're going to walk across. I can tell you the one at the Reader Center takes me 13 seconds to walk across. I'll go if it's as low as 9, because I'm pretty sure the guy can't get his engine going fast enough to hit me in that remaining 3 seconds. But that's, there's a risk appetite, risk attitude, and risk tolerance. Risk tolerance is readiness to bear risk after the things you've done in place. Risk appetite is where an organization chooses to operate, and governments very often are forced into a high risk appetite situation. In your current risk management, first gather the information, try and find out as much as you can about the context. A good risk assessment will actually have a context statement. It'll have a one-page summary at the front end that says, these were the government policies, this is the budget, we had, 12,000 employees, we were $1.6 billion a year, these were our core missions, etc. And if it's not written down, try and walk it back to figure out what it would have been. In particular, assess whether there have been changes in objectives, budget, policies, or risk tolerance. Planning is what it's all about. Managing things is what it's all about. Risk is simply an input to the process. Managers should be aware of the risks that are relevant to the function that they have, and they should understand the information to be simple for them to react to. You also have soft controls, knowledgeable and experienced staff, a commitment to ethics and values, openness and clarity, a risk management culture, coherence and alignment of staff with core objectives. All of these things help keep an organization on track. There's 11 principles of risk management. They're in the standard, they're in the book. It should always create value. It shouldn't be, oh my God, the risk guys are coming. An integral part of organizational processes, part in all decision making, explicitly address uncertainty. You should know the bounds of the uncertainty. You should know the uncertainties about the things you care about. This is the bow tie method, developed in the 1970s. So it looks at the causes of a risk, the existing controls, the loss of control condition, which is before the consequences, but you've lost control. So this is your car is skidding. It hasn't hit anything yet. This is the post-event controls. This is ambulances and helicopters and plastic surgeons. And this is actually seatbelts. Where do you want to be? Do you want to go through the windshield, or do you want to not go through the windshield? So I'll present the information using this. There's a context which determines what your risks are. There's a description of the loss of control event. There's sources of risk and consequences. There are some sources that are more important than others, and some consequences that are more important than others. And you want to look at how they work. and you put your controls between the source and the high-level control, and you can integrate across here. And using a thing called layers of protection analysis, you can actually determine what the risk level is as a result of a series of quantitative controls. And they work on either side. In order for risk management to be effective, it needs to be comprehensive. It needs to accurately differentiate between the sources of risk, the consequences of risk, and the risk itself. And needs to understand the difference between a recovery control and a preventative control. You know, this is where the seat belts are. This is where the plastic surgeons are. It's more money on this side. It's more pain and suffering. It's very often you can never get back to this side again, to the condition. You're much better to prevent the loss of control, to detect it and intercept it, rather than to allow the loss of control to occur and then to try and recover from it. This book is actually useful for big organizations as well, because it talks about how to do it, it talks about objectives, it talks about governance, it talks about all the things you have to have before you do risk management, and tells you how to determine whether or not it's working. I hope this has been a valuable presentation for you, and if there's any questions, ask away. Thank you very much.
Got a query but short on time? Email your question to info@trm.ca. Just send us your message along with details of your preferred means of contact, and we'll be in touch as soon as possible. You'll find the address at our website, trm.ca.